Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth CTE Wellness Gathering. My name is Nicole Martone, and I'm an English teacher at Danbury High School. I've also been a Portrait of a Danbury Graduate Coalition member, a Safe School Climate Chair and Coach, a department head, and an administrator of academic programs to improve graduation outcomes. Moreover, my dissertation research centered on leadership practices that facilitate positive student learning climates. In terms of my social, emotional, and physical self-care, I enjoy running and training for races.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Weiser. I teach 9th and 11th grade English at Simsbury High School, where I also serve as the instructional coach for culturally relevant teaching methods, and I serve as the director of the After School Help Center. For my self-care, I say that I have two things. One, for my physical side, I love to do yoga, and I am addicted to YouTube videos about yoga, and I also like to engage in a weekly Zoom with my adult children who live all over the country, which helps me to center myself emotionally.
Okay, our objectives today are to build communities through grade levels and disciplines with fellow teachers within and across districts, and to examine the Penn resilience skill set focusing on optimism. We have in previous wellness gatherings focused on self-awareness and strengths of character, self-regulation, and connection, and we'll do optimism today. And then our next gathering will focus on mental agility.
Teaching is an inherently optimistic act. Our job is defined by a belief that if we make effective choices, students will learn. But as we all know, both teachers and students can feel pessimistic due to a range of factors. So today we focus on how we can frame our teaching practice in the most optimistic light.
To do so, there are three areas we'll focus on today about optimism, which include the ability to notice and expect the positive, focus on what you can control, and to take purposeful action. One way to show as educators that we notice and expect the positive is through our messaging, such as what we say, or even the use of memes and posters around the room. We want to communicate an optimistic mindset that ideally pervades throughout the classroom, school, and even community.
So for our do now, we'd like to ask you to start a reflection and take a few minutes to jot down an example of embedding optimism in your teaching practice. You might also choose to identify thinking about where your example falls on the spectrum in terms of noticing and expecting the positive, focusing on what you can control, or taking purposeful action, or perhaps does your example encompass all three? Feel free to pause the video while you reflect and resume when ready.
So to help us get started, we are going to look at this short video by Simon Sinek on how I became an optimist. Simon Sinek is a renowned motivational speaker, author, and a host of a podcast, A Bit of Optimism. And he explains in this video how he possibly developed optimism through messaging from his parents and the influences he received.
You're an unshakable optimist. Is that by choice? Is that natural?
I'm sure it's learned. I'm sure something happened in my childhood that made me that way. And my parents are, I'm sure it had something to do with my parents and their outlook on the world. Or it could be a chemical imbalance, some combination. I think optimism breeds optimism.
I like that.
So I think if you have a kernel of it, and you water it and allow it to grow, it'll really take hold. And the more optimistic you become, the more optimistic people around you become, and then you become inspired by them and stay positive because I think it's sort of it breeds.
Yeah.
And like mogwais. But I think where people make a mistake is they confuse optimism and blind positivity.
Okay.
I'm not naive, because I'm an optimist.
Uh-huh.
I don't deny darkness, but I believe the future is bright. And so even now, in these strange COVID times, yeah, it's dark, and but I know there's a light at the end of this tunnel. I don't know how far away it is, and I don't know how long it'll take to get there. But I know if we work together and help each other, we'll get to the end of this tunnel stronger and better than we went in.
Yeah.
That's optimism.
Yeah.
Blind positivity is everything's fine, everything's good.
Agreed.
And that's actually not helpful because that's actually not true.
But you're ignoring something.
Yeah. But I'm not naive and I'm cynical and I'm all the things, but I still believe the future's bright.
Yeah.
An essential component of optimism is the mindset that we treat people, and particularly children, how they can be and not how they are, and watch their transformation. When you reinforce a person's potential instead of their problems or current circumstance, you allow the magic to happen. As adults, we want to be seen as our best selves, not our worst. And children are just like that in that respect. Self-fulfilling prophecies can work in both directions. If we believe something was going to turn out not good, it's more likely to go in that direction. But when we believe that something is going to go in a positive direction, it is much more likely to do so. We all have goals, even adults, and we would not have goals if we did not believe that we had the capacity to achieve them. As Carol Dweck, who coined the term growth mindset, explains, individuals who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, input from others, have a growth mindset. They tend to achieve more than those with a more fixed mindset, those who believe their talents are innate gifts. Riding bikes is a great example. No one starts off knowing out how to ride a bike. There are a great many falls and scrapes on the journey to success. Yes, none of us are defined by all the times we didn't ride the bike. Once we can ride, that success becomes part of our identity, and we are now people who know how to ride bikes. And how do we get to that point? We got there because someone, perhaps a parent or other helpful bike instructor, believed in how we could be, not how we were at that younger moment when we didn't know how to ride that bike. There was an assumption that we would eventually get it. Thus, bike riding is the perfect model for the first tenet of optimistic teaching, the ability to notice and expect the positive. When you view all students as capable of achieving, when you are optimistic that they can do it, whatever it is, then the classroom energy changes. The catch is, you really have to believe it. Kids can spot a fake a mile away. Some tips that you may consider to help you get into that true optimistic mindset. You might avoid looking at your students' academic records before meeting them so that you do not walk into the relationship with them with preconceived notions about their potential. Avoid sharing your rosters with other teachers at the start of the year so that you don't get those helpful, or maybe not so helpful, comments about what the student was like last year. And when you meet with resources in your school, such as special education case managers, frame your conversations in terms of what strategies help a given student to succeed, emphasizing your optimism that they will succeed, rather than asking for what to watch out for. Take a moment to stop and reflect. What are some strategies that you can do to help yourself get into that optimism mindset regarding all students? You might jot down one that I've just mentioned, or perhaps something else has come to mind you want to be sure to remember. Pause the video while you take a few minutes to jot down some ideas that will help you regain that optimistic mindset. Press play when you are ready to resume. One methodology to consider is to move to a more mastery-based classroom. Rather than seeing grades as finite, which is the opposite of a growth mindset, see them as snapshots in time with opportunities to improve. An excellent resource to consider is the Modern Classroom Project, which goes into great detail about a pedagogical style for seeing the possibility for all students to continually make progress. In my self-paced, mastery-based 9th grade classroom, which is based on the Modern Classroom Project, and you can certainly find their information at their website for a more detailed understanding, my students work individually and collaboratively, but at their own pace. As they feel confident with material, they take what we call a mastery check, what you might call a quiz, to demonstrate that they've mastered a reasonable level of understanding or proficiency. If they demonstrate at least 80% mastery, they move on to the next module. If they struggle, they have a variety of strategies to choose from. Rewatching a video lesson, working with a partner, coming to me at what I call my genius bar, help desk, in order to get themselves ready for mastery, and then they get another chance to demonstrate mastery, which is why I call it a mastery check and not a quiz, which kind of assumes that it's a finite goal. The assumption of this model is that all students will indeed achieve mastery. The variation is how long they might need to master specific content. We still have many full classroom discussions, games, and other activities, but the dominant mode in the classroom is a constant hum as students are working to achieve with the expectation that everyone can. The second tenet of optimistic teaching is to view uniqueness as a positive. It can be overwhelming to consider the range of abilities and backgrounds in any classroom, and to wonder how we, as teachers, can possibly meet all of those needs and interests. But, to paraphrase Maya Angelou, if you can't change something, change your attitude. So rather than view such differences as negative, think about the ways in which differences can contribute to an amazing classroom. Try noticing how you can put your students' uniqueness at the center of your interactions. For example, instead of viewing a lot of diversity as a challenge, think about how much all those different perspectives in a discussion are going to enrich that discussion. Consider how much more interesting grading will be with all those writing assignments that we have when you get so much variety of background and perspective contributing to student insight and different ways of looking at the world and text. Celebrate the many different backgrounds and how they contribute to solving problems, looking at text in ways even you, the adult, may never have considered before, or looking at different ways of completing a project or task. Understand that variety means students with a willingness to take on different roles in collaboration as people come from different households, different cultures, and different ways of group interaction. And think about how even the varied knowledge sets that come from a range of languages and cultures can be an asset in vocabulary and grammar study, as students can identify word roots from their primary language or transfer understanding of tenses from one language to another.
The next area focuses on the ability to focus on what you can control. We control what happens at our school and our classrooms, not what happened before our students walk through the school's doors. So do what you can with the time you have with your students that are in front of you. Build structures that assume the possibility of success so that students feel in control of what is happening, and it helps them be more self-directed and motivated in their learning when they feel they have control of what's happening. Whether it be that they are setting goals for themselves or reflecting on their performance and planning for the next activity, or things that provide them an opportunity to implement their interest areas. You control the systems you put in place, but those same systems help students feel in control of their academic fate. So you want to maximize the time you have with the students in front of you so that they have the opportunity to continue to learn and grow to their highest potentials. You want to level the playing field so it is more equitable for all students.
And one of the ways you can do that, as we've said, is to really think about controlling what's in your room with your systems. A great example might be when students enter school and maybe they're not so great at discussion at the beginning of the year. And so you might be prompted to wonder, what on earth did they learn last year about discussion? But that's not something you can control. Even finding out what happened at the middle school, for example, doesn't necessarily address all of your students because they probably didn't all come from the same school. You control what's in your classroom, so you can build effective models, whether it's doing regular think, pair, share, using a TQE model, anything that your kids get used to the system, so that over time, even though the topic you're discussing, the content changes, the structure remains the same, and they become much more confident knowing, oh yeah, I'm going to get that chance to write down my thoughts first. I'm going to get that chance to partner with another student and maybe do a test run before I actually have to speak in front of the whole class before they go to that whole class. And you, of course, with a great rubric, your students know what the expectations are. So even if they struggle in the beginning, they have that optimistic ability to go, I know I can control this. I know what is expected of me.
And just to piggyback on that too, Carolyn mentioned the discussion protocols. You can include accountable talk stems and statements on sheets on their desk. I have them taped to each of the students' desks so they can pick which ones to use during cooperative learning opportunities, or you can provide students with role cards that identify what they're doing and how they're participating in that learning with the group. That includes protocols as well as accountable talk stems and statements if they're unsure. But the major point here is that we can only control so much that's happening within the time that we have our student. And so we want to give them that ownership and let them know what they're capable of doing during that time frame. And we want to maximize all of those opportunities when they're with us. The next thing that we'll focus on in terms of the ability to take purposeful action has to do with feedback. And what I'm going to share with you today is called WISE feedback, where you as a teacher are taking purposeful action through the feedback you have given. You're setting up the students to take purposeful action, and you're setting an optimistic message that they can participate in rigorous learning and are capable of achieving success on the task at hand. WISE feedback is a 3-part practice for giving students this feedback, which involves explaining why you're giving the feedback, stating your high expectations for your students' work, and assuring them that you believe in their ability to learn. So again, that messaging. We want to make sure that we communicate those high expectations all of the time to our students, that they can achieve at high levels and can complete rigorous activities just as well as anyone else. What I'm going to share with you today comes from the Teaching Systems Lab at MIT. So with this template, you'll first begin by looking at a sample student's assets. What are the qualities the student is already good at? What are some of the student's interest areas? Really just start to brainstorm some assets about the student so that you can frame some positive messages that you can provide to the student in your feedback and the things that you say to the student. If you scroll down just a little bit, there's a sample for what you can say. So the description of the feedback. I'm giving feedback on the grammatical structures in your paper so you can improve them for your next draft. Then there's the message regarding high standards. These edits will take your writing to the college and professional level. And then there's the belief in the student's ability. You absolutely crushed the exercises in this unit, both in the worksheets and in your interim assessment. I know that you have the grammatical skills that can yield them well. So looking at these examples and perhaps a writing assignment from one of your students, see how you do on developing some ideas around explaining why you're giving the feedback, the high expectations for your students' work, and then ensuring that you believe in their ability to be successful. Now, there was a study conducted that looked at using WISE feedback with a diverse group of 7th grade students on a hero paper writing task. And what the study found was that with the teachers messaging that achievement gaps were lessened when high expectations were shared, when high expectations were included in the feedback. So this paper is a sample of what was collected in the study and not necessarily an exemplar. So in this particular paper, the teacher asked the student to provide some background on what it means to be a hero. The students also asked to explain the difference between a hero and an idol and to provide examples as well as supporting details. In addition to expanding his ideas, some grammatical improvements are also identified. The feedback is purposeful, actionable, stretches the student's thinking, and the teacher does have a positive affirmation at the end that asks thoughtful questions, making it clear that he or she is confident in the student's ability to improve the piece. But one thing in particular, now if you look closely at the sample, the teacher says this is good, but and then it provides some suggestions. Okay, so with the study, there were 2 groups, and a sample like this was collected, and then a cover sort of note with feedback was put on top of the paper and put in a folder. And so there were 2 types of messages that the students received. So the WISE feedback treatment note stated, I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations. I know that you can reach them. By contrast, the placebo control note stated, I'm giving you these comments so that you'll have feedback on your paper. What the article and study contends is that in the full sample, students received the treatment note, which emphasized the teacher's high standards and belief in their potential to reach those standards, proved more likely that the students would revise the paper. And overall in the study, lessened achievement gaps. So the actual article is linked here as well for your reference, so you can read more about what was conducted and the outcomes.
Remember, if we model optimism in our practice, students will be more optimistic about their abilities. I'm sure in our various teacher programs over the years, we've heard about self-efficacy. And as a reminder, self-efficacy is the confidence that one can accomplish a desired outcome in a given context if the requisite application of skill is put forth. And students with a sense of self-efficacy are more likely to take academic risks, which in turn are more likely to be rewarded with success. In short, if our students are optimistic that they can achieve, they are more likely to. And if we send that message of optimism that we believe they can achieve, then they will internalize that messaging of positive affirmation. In turn, we need to be optimistic about our own ability as teachers to make positive change. We went into the field because we believed in the power of a good teacher to impact students in profound ways. We have to find ways to remind ourselves to look in the mirror and see the positive force that we can be. Because if we truly believe that we have the power to impact a student, then we keep trying until we find a way to reach them and give them the optimism to move themselves forward in like fashion.
So as mentioned, our messaging, such as through memes, can be a great way to spread optimism and positivity during challenging and stressful times, especially now while teaching and learning during a pandemic. The article linked here showcases a research study that discusses the benefits of using memes. And memes can be a lot of fun in your classes that you can put onto your Google Slides, for example, and they can be really engaging for kids and sort of lighten up the mood. So the title of this article is That COVID Meme Was Good for Your Health During the Pandemic. And it emphasizes taking a break to view and share bits of cute or funny pop culture commentary in the form of COVID-19 related memes can be a quick and easy way to connect with others and address pandemic stress head on through laughter. So again, it's just one suggestion that shows the benefits of memes in terms of reducing stress, and another way to spread optimism in your classrooms with your students, especially now because particularly in my district, this is our first year full in person, and a lot of our students don't know each other. They hadn't been in school. I teach juniors, and they've taken a while to come out of their shells. And so just having something that engages them and makes them feel good is a great way to send a positive and optimistic message to your class. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that we see you again in other professional developments or at the conference in the spring. If you'd like to become a member, please go to our website at ctcte.net, and we look forward to seeing you then. Bye.
Bye.